This is Jennifer Beamer, owner-operator of Expertly Dyed Art by Science, and this is Fiber Talk episode 12, and today we're going to be talking about Ryeland. As a sheep breed, Ryeland is one of the older British sheep breeds, where in the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook, they say that it was a breed raised by monks in the early 1300s, and that even the softness of this fiber rivaled that of Spanish merinos. And if you know anything about merino, it's very, very soft. And Ryeland isn't a wool that we're very familiar with, because you would think that if it was a rival to merino, it would be very commercially viable, but it's not. Unfortunately, because of selective breeding towards a meat carcass rather than the wool, you basically lose the development of a fine fleece through that process. And it's not always the case where you can breed for qualities of meat and wool simultaneously. It's usually a really great meat breed that happens to have decent enough fleece for spinning, or the other way around, where you've got a really great fleece for spinning, but it's kind of a mediocre meat carcass. These things happen. I'm not a geneticist, I can't really say for sure, but I just know from having read a lot about different sheep breeds, it's very difficult to get improvements equally in both the way that the meat tastes and the way that the fleece feels. Ryeland is one of those sheep breeds that a lot of people aren't as familiar with, but when you get a hold of them, you'll quickly fall in love with it, and here's why. Here is the pure Ryeland that I spun. And one of the things about Ryeland, and this is actually corroborated by a guild member that I was talking to about this, it's really, really great bouncy wool that is excellent for things like socks. In fact, Queen Elizabeth was gifted a pair in the 1600s of Ryeland stockings, and if you're going to give a monarch such a gift, you know, it has to be good quality. So I think that allows you to understand the bespoke nature of Ryeland. Now, one of the things that I loved about this wool is that it is incredibly springy. And I'll show you just here. There's a lot of give, a lot of natural stretch, and that's something that you would attribute to its crimp. In fact, an example like this, you can kind of see the crimp structure is very similar to that of merino, although the locks aren't quite as perfectly defined as you would expect one of those finer breeds. There is still quite a bit of crimp, and actually you can really see it in this particular lock. So as I'm pulling on the lock there, you can see just how much zigzag crimp is locked up in there. If you were to compare this with a merino lock, for example, it wouldn't be quite as crimpy, but it's similar enough to kind of give you that same sense of how it's going to react when you're spinning it. And the same kind of applications that you might use for merino, you could use Ryeland for, but you get a couple of great benefits. One of them is its slightly improved durability, so it's not quite as soft as that of merino. It's kind of around the 25, 27 micron range, and because of that, it's a little bit thicker than the merino, which is a bit finer, and because it's not quite as fine, it's not going to pill as easily, and it's not going to wear out as easily. Finer microns means that the actual fiber diameter is smaller, and if you think about a spun yarn having lots and lots of fiber, individual fiber strands in there, if they're very easy to break, then a lot of abrasion over time will cause something that is comprised of finer fibers, will braid faster than that of yarns made of slightly thicker individual fibers. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so you basically get a very similar softness, a very similar crimp structure as merino, but you get improved durability. And because of this crimp structure, it makes really, really great socks. And as I showed you just before, it is a very springy wool. So it's going to have a lot of memory. So if you're knitting something that is more form-fitting, then you would want to substitute Ryeland in the case where you want like a more durable but soft sweater that's going to fit your body. Then that would be the best logical choice if maybe you don't want to use merino because you want it to last longer, right? The other really great thing, which you probably already noticed, it's got this lovely gray color. So at the base it's a bit more gray, and at the tips it's a little bit more brown. Come on, focus. I'll also post these photos to the blog at some point, so you don't have to just rely on YouTube videos for how they look. But they also come in a slight variety of color, even on the same animal. So I bought 2 fleeces, and this is some of the darker locks, and then this is actually some of the lighter locks. So you can see, in this way, it's very reminiscent of Jacob, where they're considered piebald, so they've got lots of different colors on the same animal at the same time, so you can actually get a lot of variation of natural colors just from either separating out the different colors and carding them as is, or sort of blending a bit of this and a bit of that together to get that shade in between. So when it comes to dyeing, you can actually use these natural colors as the base of the tone, and if you wanted to dye it all at the same time, you could get lots of different colors of the same on the same fleece together, put it all in the same dye bath of the same color. So let's say you want to dye everything pink, then you'll get this really nice gradient of colors, from the lightest bit being the most bright in the color and the darkest bit being the darkest value, which totally makes sense if you think about it. But it's really great if you're not super good at dyeing, then buying a colored fleece that has some color variation inherently within the fleece, then you don't have to do anything really scientific or experimental, and it's sort of a safe bet. I also just wanted to show here in the Fleece and Fiber Source book one of the pictures, because I think this really illustrates the amount of variety of color that you can get. I think they had 2 different Ryeland animals. So one that produced a fleece that was a lot lighter in color, and one that was a lot darker in color. White can be seen in the breed, but it's not as common as the colored breeds. And so maybe my white wasn't quite as white as this, but the fact that I could get such a bright lock and a dark lock on the same fleece gives me a lot of flexibility with whatever project I want to do with it, or in my case, sell it. So yeah, no, in terms of what you're going to get in colors, I think it's a really great option, because with merino you pretty much only ever get white, although there are some colored merinos out there. In terms of fleeces, you are going to get a huge bang for your buck. So in here it says for British and Australian fleeces, they can be between 4.5 and 6.5 pounds. And I would say each of mine are probably on that higher end. But in New Zealand, they can be almost double that, where they're 6.5 to 9 pounds. That's insane. That's a huge, huge fleece. And part of that is going to be contingent on the kind of environment they're growing in. So maybe in Britain they don't grow as fast as they do in New Zealand, but also keep in mind that a fleece that's really, really big might not necessarily be good. So because Ryeland hasn't been sort of commercialized, you're going to get a lot more variation from animal to animal, from shepherd or shepherdess to the next one. So in this case, you can't just assume a 21 micron merino is going to be very consistent across the board, or a merino fleece that weighs 5 pounds will give you the quality you want. At this point, it's probably best to go and actually feel it yourself, or having respectable people that have gone out and done all this quality control provide you with a more accurate representation of what that fleece quality is like. So in my 2 fleeces, it says here 25 to 28 microns for the British ones. I would say mine is probably closer to that 25 range, because I have some 21 micron merino and it feels more similar to that than some of the coarser fleeces that I have. So I'm judging based on how it feels, and you know, that's close to 10 years of experience in my fingertips, so I'm reasonably confident in that. But there's also this other point here. The New Zealand fleeces are 26 to 32 microns. So to me, that suggests that these are probably bigger animals and producing bigger fleeces. So just bear in mind that a bigger fleece does not mean improved quality. So if you're looking for fleeces, you know, you can be a little bit more decisive about where you pick and what your actual project is. If you want to make socks, maybe you want a bigger fleece because you're going to get the same kind of crimpiness as the 25 micron fleece that I've got, but it's going to be a little bit more durable, and so you won't have to worry about your socks wearing out so quickly because you're using a slightly coarser wool. In this case, I did something slightly different. So instead of just using the plain fleece and going off of that, I decided to experiment a little bit with how it blends. And in this one, you can see it's a lot lighter, obviously, but there are some small bits where the silk that I added, like in this bit here, didn't quite completely blend, and that's fine because I only ran it through the drum carder twice. So this is about 70-75% Ryeland, and then I used white undyed alpaca and then just undyed mulberry silk. And because those are also lighter in color, it's going to bring up the total value of the original Ryeland to be brighter white. So just a minute, like this would be a little bit darker had I not added those 2 extra fibers. But one of the things that I noticed is, because alpaca and silk don't have a whole lot of crimp, silk has none obviously, it produced a yarn that was slightly thinner than the original Ryeland. And the reason being is that crimp, that extra crimp, gets taken out because the silk is sort of flattening the fibers. So it produces a much more consistent yarn. So when you spin it, ply it, wash it, it doesn't have as much bloom because the silk and the alpaca are kind of keeping that from happening. And also there are fewer Ryeland fibers for the same diameter of yarn over the length consistently. So it doesn't have the opportunity to bloom out from itself because it might be right next to an alpaca fiber rather than another Ryeland fiber. On the other hand, spinning these pretty much simultaneously, I did one right after the other, I was able to make sure that my gauge at the wheel was the same. But obviously the Ryeland puffed up a little bit more, kind of in the way that Polwarth or Rambouillet might. So if you are using 2 types of yarn where one is pure and the other one isn't, you're going to have to keep that in mind. And I think that goes for most wools, especially if you're working with wools that are more crimpy rather than curly. But it's not going to disrupt the project that I have in mind, which is this. I'm notoriously bad for spinning up a test skein, reviewing it, discussing it, what my experience was like, and then it sits in my stash for an eternity because partially I want to film and do pictures and stuff like that with it. And when I do my suggestions of what I think it's good for, it's based mostly on my intuition or my experiences in the past. But I don't often use these skeins for projects right after. And so I'm going to be using this to do two things at the same time. I have never done stranded knitting and I've always wanted to do it, and I've got lots of different patterns on Ravelry in my queue that I have thought I'll totally get to at some point, but I haven't still, and it's been 4 years, 5 years, 8 years since I queued them. So in honor of this video, I'm actually going to sit down and make a pair of stranded mittens. Of course, they're going to be Celtic because I like dragons and I study the Iron Age period, and it's also often equated with Celticity, whether or not that's appropriate or not, you know. Don't want this to be an academic discussion right now. But I have a pair of mittens and they're starting to go out the window. I do a lot of cycling and the hand part, the palm, is starting to wear out, and rather than quickly knitting a pair, which I usually end up doing, I'm actually going to take the time to make a nice pair, wear them when the other ones actually fall apart, and I'm going to see how well this yarn is going to hold up to that kind of abrasion. And that kind of leads me sort of backwards into the discussion about the way that I went about the spinning process. When you are working with wool, you don't necessarily always have to have this end goal in mind when you sit down at your wheel or with your spindle, but it's very influential if you know what your end product is going to be used for. So in my case, I wanted to pick a project where I actually will use this yarn for something, and because I knew I was getting to a position where I needed to deal with my mittens, I thought, okay, well, let's look at mitten patterns before I begin, and then kind of worked backwards towards, okay, well, this is what I need to spin for that particular project. So rather than just doing a 2-ply or a single, I did a 3-ply, and I did a Navajo ply because I didn't want to waste any of the yardage, but I also wanted to see how well the loops would disappear. There's actually one right there. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's right there is the loop when you do the long crochet chain when you're doing a Navajo ply, and it pretty much just disappears into the yarn, and that's, I think, because of the crimp structure of the actual fiber that allows that to happen. But it's also a good test to see if that would be good for whatever fiber you're working with, so that you know, okay, well, if I want to make a 3-ply of this fiber, I can't do a Navajo ply because you'll be able to see the loop. It'll stick out in the yarn and it won't look nice. And that way you would do a more traditional 3-ply where you would have 3 bobbins or 3 balls that you would combine together rather than one that you chain ply into 3. So what I did for the single is I put a lot of twist in it, and then when I plied it, I put an equal amount of twist in so that they would kind of balance each other out, and I wouldn't get a hard 3-ply, but it would sort of retain some of that loftiness. Because I also want these mittens to be warm. So if you are a cyclist, you know that when your hands are on the handlebars, they get cold. So whereas I want something that's going to be hard wearing, I also want something that's not going to make my hands cold while I'm cycling. And that was my motivation for making a fluffy 3-ply rather than a harder or a worsted 3-ply, or something that was where the ply had more twist than the singles. But it didn't actually detract, I think, from the way that it looks. And because you actually have a little bit more of this loftiness, I think it's going to help with knitting more densely, and with a stranded pattern, you're actually going to get double. So it's not just the one color and like one thickness of the fabric. You're going to have two colors and almost like a double thickness of the fabric, because the way that the pattern is designed is you carry those colors that you're not using together with the color that you are using, and so it produces a lot more density in the fabric. So I'm hoping that these are going to be really, really warm mittens and they'll look cool. So yeah. Would I recommend buying Ryeland? Absolutely. I think it's a really great versatile wool. It's a great substitute for merino. It is way cheaper than merino. It may not be as easy to find because it is a conservation breed, but because it is a conservation breed, it needs your dollars or pounds or euros or whatever monetary unit you use. Because without their genetic diversity, then we have one less fleece or animal that we could rely on for fleece qualities that you can't necessarily find in one breed of sheep. So if you are in the market for another fleece, because I don't know of very many companies, there's probably some Etsy ones where you can get this as a roving or bats like me. I'll put these in the shop at some point. And you know, that way you can get smaller quantities that are already processed and so very easy to work with, or else, you know, they're very big fleeces. You might be able to get a few people interested to like buy it, wash it, split it up, that sort of thing. That way everybody gets smaller, more reasonable quantities. And like I said before, where you buy it from will be influential, right? So if you want a finer fleece, you might look for those in Britain. If you want something that's a little bit coarser but still got all those really great qualities that you're looking for, maybe you look for one that's in New Zealand. It's totally up to you. I hope you liked this video, and if you're watching all the way to the end and you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any comments or questions about Ryeland in particular, all you have to do is post in the comments below, and I, or even part of the community, will follow up with whatever it was you were asking about. And if you have requests for other videos, not necessarily fiber talk, anything at all, like seriously anything, just put that there as well. I will have a link in the description for the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook, because I think it's a really great resource, especially when you're just trying to test out the waters. And any other links related to how to get a hold of me if you've got other questions or you just want to say something to me privately, that's cool too, and that will also be in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!